Hello, dear children. Today, let us continue the third part of History Class 7, first chapter. Boys, in the last discussion of this very chapter, we have done about Jatis framed their own rules and regulations to manage the conduct of their members. How that means these Jatis, they framed their own rules and regulations we have learned. These regulations were enforced by an assembly of elders, described in some areas as the Jati Panchayat. So these rules and regulations, these were enforced, these were caused by necessity or force by an assembly of elders, described in some areas as the Jati Panchayat. They are described as Jati Panchayat in some areas. But jatis were also required to follow the rules of their villages. But these jatis, they were also required to follow the rules of their villages. They can't go beyond the rules of their villages. Several villages were governed by chieftain. So several villages were there which were governed by the chief of the clan. Together they were only one small unit of a state. So as a group of all, they were only one small unit of a state. So we have done up to here in our previous days discussion. So now let us continue. Have a look, page number 9. From the beginning of this page, let us see a region and empire. See a region, that means areas, and empire, an extension group of states here. Large states like those of the Cholas, you will get in chapter number 2 this one, Tughlaqs or Mughals, encompassed many regions. So large states such as those of the Cholas, the Tughlaqs or Mughals, which you will get in different chapters in this book. It has mentioned here in the bracket. You can see their voice. Encompassed many regions. They hold within many regions. Encompass means hold within. A Sanskrit Prashasti praising the Delhi Sultan Gyasuddin Balban explained that he was the ruler of a vast empire that stretched from Bengal in the east to Ghazni in Afghanistan in the west and included all of the South India. So here a Sanskrit Prashasti. Prashasti means it is a special kind of inscription, boys. So here it praising the Delhi Sultan, whose name is Gyasuddin Balban. They explained that he was the ruler of a vast empire. He was the ruler. He was the person who was ruling there. A vast, that means very great areas that stretched from Bengal in the east to Ghazni in Afghanistan in the west. See, the stretch of that means different regions. It is from Bengal to Ghazni in Afghanistan. Ghazni is there in Afghanistan, boys. In the west and included all the South India. So in the west you see this Afghanistan, starting from that means from the east, Bengal, to Ghazni of Afghanistan in the west, which included all the South India. That means South India was included there. People of different regions, Gauda, Andhra, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat, apparently fled before his armies. So, people, you see, of different parts of different areas, say from Gouda, Andhra, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. Apparently, they fled before his armies. Historians regard this as exaggerated claims of conquest. So, here historians they regard this as exaggerated claims. Exaggerated means here to make something seem large, better, worse, etc. It is than it really is. Claims of conquest. Conquest means the act of conquering. At the same time, they tried to understand why rulers kept claiming to have control over different parts of the subcontinent. Meanwhile, what happened? They try to understand here why these rulers they kept claiming to have control over different parts or different regions of the subcontinent. By 700, many regions already possessed distinct geographical dimensions and their own language and cultural characteristics. So by 700, here many areas already possessed distinct geographical dimensions. Distinct means separate. Geographical dimensions. Dimension means it is a measurement of the length, width, height of something, okay, like that. And their own language and cultural characteristics. You will learn more about this in chapter 9. Okay, that means in chapter 9 you will learn about this in detail. They were also associated with specific ruling dynasties. There was considerable conflict between these states. Here, they were also associated with specific ruling dynasties. They were associated with particular ruling dynasties. And there was considerable conflict. Conflict means a fight or an argument. It's called conflict, boys. So there was considerable conflict between these states. Occasionally, dynasties like the Cholas, Khaljis, Tughlaqs, and Mughals were able to build an empire that was pan-regional, spanning diverse regions. Occasionally, these dynasties like the Chola dynasty, Khaljis, Tughlaq, and Mughal dynasties, they were able to build an empire that was pan-regional, spanning diverse regions. Pan-regional means it is a geographic region or state's sphere of economic, political, and cultural influence extending beyond that state's borders. Spanning means extend from side to side of diverse regions. Okay. Not all these empires were equally stable or successful. Not all these empires they do not that means successful equally or remain stable. Okay. Compare for example tables 1 in chapters 3 and 4. What was the duration of rule of the Khalji and Mughal dynasties? You just compare tables 1 in which is given in chapter number 3 and 4, and from there you can know what was the duration of rule of the Khalji and Mughal dynasties. When the Mughal Empire declined in the 18th century, boys, you mark it, okay? This Mughal Empire declined in 18th century here. When the Mughal Empire decline means fall down. In the 18th century, it led to re-emergence of regional states. Here, as this Mughal Empire, it was fall down in the 18th century. It led what? To the re-emergence of regional states. So it led what? Re-emergence. Re-emergence means come out of regional states. As Mughal Empire, it was declined there. You can see that one in chapter number 10. But years of imperial pan-regional rule had altered the character of the regions. See, but years of imperial means connected with empire or its ruler, means when that means it was ruling. So pan-regional rule, pan-regional means a geographic region, states, sphere of economic, political and cultural influence extending beyond that state's border, which I have already told you earlier. So their rule had altered. Altered means to become different. The character of the regions. Across most of the subcontinent, the regions were left with the legacies of the big and small states and ruled over them. So across most of the subcontinent. Here in India, the regions were left with the legacies. Legacies means money or property that is given to you after somebody dies, like that. The rights of the big and small states that rule over them. This was apparent in the emergence of many distinct and shared traditions in the realms of governance, the management of the economy, elite cultures, and language. Here, uh, this was apparent in the emergence about these legacies. It was apparent. Apparent means seems to be real, connected with God, like that. Okay. In the emergence means appearance of many distinct, many different and shared traditions in the realms means an area of activity, like that, of governance, the management of the economy, elite cultures and language. Here that means the management of economy and elite cultures means high cultures and language. Through the 1,000 years between 700 and 1750, the character of the different regions did not grow in isolation. Through this, you see the 1,000 years, which was in between 700 and 1750, the character of the different regions did not grow in isolation. Okay, isolation means being separate and alone. It was not grown, that means uh, in isolation, separately. They feel the impact of larger pan-regional forces of integration without ever quite losing their distinctiveness. There they felt what? The impact. Impact means the impression of larger pan-regional forces of integration without ever quite losing their distinctiveness. Okay, without quite losing their Distinctiveness here means easily distinguishable. So without that, that means there is impact of large pan-regional forces of integration. Okay, without ever quite losing their distinctiveness here. They feel so. Old and new religions. Let us see now. The 1,000 years of history that we are exploring witnessed more developments in religious traditions. Boys, 1,000 years of history that we are exploring. Exploring means to travel around a place, etc., in order to learn about it. Means we are, yes, that means uh, learning about it. It witnessed major developments in religious traditions. There is the proof for major developments which took place in religious traditions. People's belief in the divine was sometimes deeply personal, but more usually it was collective. People's they believe what? They believe in the divine. Divine means connected with God. Okay, was sometimes deeply personal, but more usually it was collective. Collective belief in a supernatural agency, a religion was often closely connected with the social and economic organization of local communities. Collective belief in supernatural. Supernatural means which cannot be explained by the laws of science. That agency, a religion, was often closely connected with the social and economic organization of local communities. It was uh, closely, we find what connected with the social and economic organization of local communities. As the social worlds of these groups altered, so too did their beliefs. It was during this period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. So at the time, important changes it took place in what we call in Hinduism today. These included the worship of new deities, the construction of temples by royalty, and the growing importance of Brahmanas, the priests, as dominant groups in society. See here, what are the changes that took place at the time? These were included the worship of new deities, god goddesses, the construction of temples by royalty, by king, queen, like that, and the growing importance of Brahmanas, the importance of Brahmins, the priests who used to celebrate pujas in temples as dominant groups in society. So, in their life, that means their change shows here. Their knowledge of Sanskrit texts earned the Brahmanas a lot of respect in society. So, the knowledge in Sanskrit by Brahmanas, it earned a lot of respect in the society. Their dominant position was consolidated by the support of their patrons. Okay, see, new rulers searching for prestige. So, the dominant position and position was consolidated by the supporter of their patrons. Patrons means here, have a look, that means the right margin. Meaning of this patron, an influential wealthy individual who supports another person, an artist, a craftsperson, a learned man, or a noble. That is the meaning of these patrons. New rulers searching of prestige. Prestige means reputation. New rulers, they were searching for their own reputation. One of the major developments was the emergence of the idea of bhakti, of a loving personal deity that devotees could reach without the aid of priests or elaborate rituals. So one of the major developments it was the emergence. Emergence means appearance of the idea of bhakti. Okay, the idea of bhakti, it was appeared at the time, and means here of a loving personal deity and devotees could reach without the aid of priests or elaborate rituals. So any deities you see, a personal deity or devotees, they could reach without the work of priests or elaborate any rituals. Rituals means ceremony. Okay, rituals means it is a ceremony. You will be learning about this and other traditions in chapter 8, boys. In chapter 8, you will learn about this and other traditions in more details. Okay, in chapter number 8. This was also the period when new religions appeared in the subcontinent. So it was the period when new religions it appeared in our subcontinent India. Merchants and migrants first brought the teachings of the Holy Quran to India in the 7th century. So traders and those Persian who came from other countries, they brought at first the teachings of the Holy Quran in our India in the 17th century. Muslims regard the Quran as their holy book and accept the sovereignty of the one God Allah, whose love, mercy, and beauty embrace all those who believe in Him without regard to social background. So Muslim, they used to regard the Quran as their holy book, boys. Quran is the holy book of Muslim communities. They used to respect and regard the Quran as their holy book and accept the sovereignty of the one God Allah, and they accept the holiness of the one God Allah. The God of Muslim is known as Allah, whose love, mercy means kindness, and beauty embrace all those who believe in Him without any uh, without regard to social background. So he may from any social background. So there was no difference about that. Many rulers were patrons of Islam, and the ulama learned theologians and jurists. Many rulers, they were the patrons of Islam. Here and the ulama learned theologians. Theologians means a theologian is someone who studies the nature of God, religion, and religious belief. And jurists. Jurist means a person who is expert in law. And like Hinduism, Islam was interpreted in the variety of ways by its followers. Like our Hinduism, Islam was also uh, interpreted. Interpreted means to explain or understand the meaning of something in a variety of ways by its followers. those who follow this Islamism to them. Okay, there were the Shia Muslims who believed that the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali was legitimate leader of the Muslim community, and Sunni Muslims who accepted the authority of the early leaders, caliphs of the community, and the succeeding caliphs. Shia and Sunni, these are the two groups of Muslim communities, boys. So there were the Shia Muslims who believed that the Prophet Muhammad was the founder of Islamism. Okay, this Prophet Muhammad, don't forget it. So, Prophet Muhammad's son in law Ali was legitimate, a leader of the Muslim community. So, uh, Ali, he was the reasonable or acceptable, legitimate means reasonable or acceptable leader of the Muslim community. And another group, that is the Sunni Muslims, who accepted the authority of the early leaders, caliphs of the community, and the succeeding caliphs. There were other important differences between the various schools of law, Hanafi and Shafi'i, mainly in India, and in theology and mystic traditions. There were, you see, other important differences also in between the various schools of law and in theology and mystic conditions. Mystic means a person who spends his or her life developing his or her spirit and communicating with God. Thinking about time and historical periods. Historians do not see time just as a passing of hours, days, or years, as a clock of or a calendar. Historians, those who deal history, they do not see time just that means as a passing of hours, days, or years, as a clock or a calendar. Time also reflects changes in social and economic organization, in the persistence and transformation of ideas and beliefs. Time, it also reflects what? Science, changes in social and economic organization, in the persistence and transformation of ideas and beliefs there. The study of time is made somewhat easier by dividing the past into large segments or periods that possesses shared characteristics. See, the study of time, it is made somewhat easier. It made somewhat easier as it has divided, okay, by dividing the past into large segments or periods that possess shared characteristics. In the middle of the 19th century, British historians divided the history of India into three periods. So in the middle of 19th century, these British historians, they divided the history of India into three periods, which were known as Hindu, Muslim, and British. Boys, mark this one. This Hindu, Muslim, and British, how it was divided into periods. This division was based on the idea that the religion of rulers was the only important historical change, and that there were no other significant developments in the economy, society, or culture. So the division of this, you see, it was based on the idea that the religion of rulers was the only important historical change. It was, that means, the only important historical change there, and that there were no other Meaningful development significant means meaningful developments in the economy, society, or culture. Such a division also ignored the rich diversity of the subcontinent. So this type of division it also ignored. It do not allow the rich diversity of the subcontinent. The a wide variety of something is known as diversity here was okay. So it ignored the rich diversity of the subcontinent. Few historians follow this periodization today. Most look to economic and social factors to characterize the major elements of different moments of the past. Few historians follow this periodization today. Here, most look to economic and social factors in order to characterize the major elements of different moments of the past. The histories you read last year included a wide range of early societies: hunter gatherers, early farmers, people living in towns and villages, and early empires and kingdoms. See, the stories which you read last year in class 6 boys, it included a wide range of early societies. It has narrated there, like as hunter gatherers, early farmers, people living in towns and villages, and early empires and kingdoms. The histories you will be studying this year are often described as medieval. So here in that means this year in class 7 book you will study often which is described as medieval, the middle age. Okay, middle. You will find out more about the spread of peasant societies, the rise of regional and imperial state formations, sometimes at the cost of pastoral and forest people, the development of Hinduism and Islam as major religions, and the arrival of European trading companies. So, you will find out here in class 7 books more about the spread of peasants societies, worker societies, poor people societies, the rise of regional and imperial state formations, sometimes at the cost of pastoral. Pastoral means a priest and forest people, the development of Hinduism and Islam as major religions, and the arrival of European trading companies, and that means reaching of these European trading companies. You'll know. These 1,000 years of Indian history witnessed considerable change. So, within these 1,000 years of Indian history, a great change witnessed. It proved a considerable change was there. Remarkable change took place. After all, the 16th and 18th centuries were quite different from the 8th or the 11th century. Okay, here you see the difference. You'll find the difference which was there in between 16th and 18th centuries were quite different to compare with 8th or the 11th century. Therefore, describing the entire period as one historical unit is not without its problems. That is why to describe the whole period as one historical unit, it is not without its problems. It is full of problems. Moreover, the medieval period is often contrasted with the modern period. Uh, Moreover, the medieval period it is always compare people or things in order to show the differences between them with the modern period. Modernity carries with it a sense of material progress and intellectual advancement. Modernity it carries with it a sense of material which progressed, and intellectual. Intellectual means connected with a person's ability to think in a logical way and to understand things. Intellectual advancement. This seems to suggest that the medieval period was lacking in any change whatsoever. So it seems what? To suggest that the medieval period was lacking, there was lack of in any change at all. But of course, we know this was not the case. During these 1,000 years, the societies of the subcontinent were transformed often, and economies in several regions reached a level of prosperity that attracted the interest of European trading companies. So, during these 1,000 years, the societies of the subcontinent were transformed, often economies in several regions. Transformed means changed completely, often, and economies in several regions reached a level of prosperity. It is towards, that means the progress that attracted the interest of European trading companies. So, European trading companies, they feel interested here. As you read this book, look out for signs of change and the historical processes at work. Also, whenever you can try and compare what you read in this book with what you read last year. So, also that means whenever you read this, as you read this book, boys, look out for a signs of change, whatever change, and the historical process at work took place here. Also, whenever you can try and compare what you read in this book of class 7 and what you read last year in class 6 book. Look out for changes and continuities wherever you can, and look at the world around you to see what else has changed or remained the same. Beyond that, uh, what that means, look at the world around you to see what else changes it took place and what are remained as it is. So here is the end of the chapter. Thank you all.